Hi there and welcome to this video, which is all about navigating grief, particularly as an extra sensitive person. And so in the video I'm going to talk a little bit about what challenges come up with grief. I mean, it seems quite obvious, but there are some nuanced challenges if you're extra sensitive, and really importantly, what things you can do to support yourself through the grieving process. Okay, so before we begin, my name's Nicola. I'm a yoga teacher, a yoga therapist. I'm highly sensitive. I'm also neurodivergent myself. And importantly for this video, I fairly recently had 2 bereavements, which have been really significant for me. And so, as with many things that I do, I go through things, I learn about how to support myself, and then I see what works, and I like to share what I found worked the most for other people going through similar things. Let's start with the challenges then. So, it goes without saying, any bereavement or loss is always a challenge for anybody, regardless of who you are and your makeup. However, when you are highly sensitive or neurodivergent or neurocomplex, which is a new term that I learned recently, it comes with additional challenges. So it goes without saying that emotional overload can be one of the things that happens when you feel so deeply. It can be really hard to regulate those or regulate from those feelings. And I'm hesitating because, you know, when you go through a grief, you want to honour that loss. You don't want to regulate or be plain sailing. You want to allow those emotions to come and to move through the body. But you know, with anybody who experiences overstimulation or difficulty regulating emotions, then it can be really hard to navigate. And also if you struggle with alexithymia, like I do, so if you're not sure what that is, it's a difficulty in identifying emotions, then that can be a new one as well, because you're feeling them really intensely, but it can be a real struggle to unpick what's what. And also, if you're somebody that picks up on other people's emotions, you're taking all of their stuff on, it is like a soup of feelings at times, not knowing what's yours, what isn't, of the stuff that is yours, what it is, and quite often it's too much. And as a HSP, being overstimulated is when it's too much, too fast, too often. And often a bereavement has all of those things in. So it's going to be a challenge, of course. And when something like this happens, it can really suddenly disrupt your routines. There might be the shock factor. So if you've experienced a death that has been really unexpected, that can be really jarring for a sensitive system. Equally, if you're somebody who has supported a loved one through a long illness, there's perhaps been a very prolonged grief. Often it's almost like this feeling of like a holding inhale or a breath in for such a long time. And when they pass, there's these mixed feelings, you know, perhaps a sense of relief that the person's no longer suffering, all tied in with that loss and other emotions around it. There also can be difficulty with boundaries when a bereavement happens. You know, you're navigating your own emotions, you're potentially navigating other people's emotions. And if it's a new thing, if there hasn't been a death in the family before, then it can be very different to navigate. So who does what? What's the right thing to do? What's expected? Maybe people overstay their welcome, for example, or maybe other people's feelings take over and yours aren't considered. There's a whole host of things that can come up around boundaries. And I also think when you go through a death, it kind of reveals dynamics in families that perhaps have been underneath the surface but not spoken about, or even not even noticed until that moment happens. So there can be a lot. There's a lot. Okay, let's get on to how you can support yourself then. The bereavement's not going away. If you are currently going through a bereavement, you know, it's there, it's happened, it will be navigated in whatever fashion. But I feel that there are things that we can do to just allow it to happen. Oftentimes when someone's struggling with their grief, it's often because it's not being allowed to happen. It's surprising how long we can hold on to grief for if we're not allowing it to move through us. So the first thing that I would say, and I wish I'd have done this sooner when I lost my dad, is number one, expect less of yourself. And what I mean is, don't necessarily expect yourself to keep up with the pace of life. I know many of us process grief through being busy, but often that can be a real distraction tactic, and the grief will just prolong itself. For some of us, that's what works, and that's how we process it, and that's fine. But it might be that you need to expect less. It might be that you're really tired when this happens. I know for me, and I think this is part of being neurodivergent, the processing of everything is an extra cognitive demand. It's an extra emotional load. It's also extra on my senses. There was a lot more communication during the immediate time around my losses, and so I was really tired. I slept a lot more. My personal self-care practices were a lot more, they looked like sleep, naps, meditation, restorative yoga nidra practices, all of those kinds of really deeply restful practices. And it's kind of like a mini depression for some of us. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that's how it felt for me. And that can be made hard if we expect ourselves to keep going at the same pace as we've been going and keep up with all of our demands. So if you can, look at your commitments, see if you can expect a little less of yourself. Maybe there are things that you can't escape doing, and that's fine, but maybe there are other things. So maybe less socialising. I know socialising can be a support, but just looking at where you can expect a little less of yourself. Okay, so the second one is have or create a safe, quiet space, perhaps in your home or somewhere around your home, where you can be, where you can cry, where you can remember. Ideally, somewhere that's low in sensory stimulation, if you like. So, low lighting, really soft blankets. I'm seeing a candle, that kind of environment where you can just be held. It might be the place you go to where you have a good sob. It might be the place you go to when you just need some quiet time. It might be the place you go to just lie down, or the place you go to look at photos and remember that person, and so on. Third thing is really gentle restorative practices. A restorative yoga practice, for example, is deeply supportive for me. Our emotions are felt in the body, they're experienced in the body, and they can create tension as well. So very often, and I've seen this many times with my clients, grief usually sits here in the lungs, obviously around the heart. So it can really affect our breathing, and we can often feel quite restricted in our breath when we're in that real deep grief phase. And so movements like a gentle yoga practice can be really helpful to just ease out those tensions, give us space to connect back with our bodies and allow ourselves time to process those emotions, and then crucially rest, because processing big emotions is tiring. So the fourth one then is to honour and allow those emotions to move through. If we are somebody that's in that role in our families or in our circle, that is the person that is the shoulder for other people, then maybe we feel it's really difficult to cry with others, or to be held by others, or to even have our emotions as a priority. Perhaps supporting other people's emotions is and has always been a priority. Having the mindset of giving yourself permission to feel your emotions is really important, because they will be there, and they'll be there waiting for you when you're ready. So just allowing them to move through, and also allowing them to move through at the intensity that they require. We often especially here in the UK, we have a culture of, you know, stiff upper lip and big emotions being really uncomfortable, and grief can be messy and loud and proper sobby, snotty, ragey kind of vibe to it. It might not, but it can. And allowing those moments to happen will be really helpful for your body, it'll be helpful for your process if they're there. You don't need to force anything, but if they're there, know that you have full permission to do that. Okay, the next one is about practicing mindfulness. A mindfulness practice is all about bringing your awareness to the present moment as it unfolds, with an element of curiosity, not judging, compassion and kindness. And when we do this, it really allows us to create space between our true selves and that kind of chatter in our mind. And when we do that, we're really able to surf those big waves of emotion and see them for what they are. We can become really attuned to how those emotions are felt and experienced in the body, and we can go, oh, okay, that's that. Okay, wow, that's getting caught in my shoulder blade, or gosh, I didn't realise I was feeling so sad. You know, and it gives us a greater connection to ourselves, really, so that we can look after ourselves better and cultivate that compassion for ourselves too. So the next one, number 6, is nature. Nature can be a huge source of therapy, actually, when we're going through a bereavement, because when we get out into nature and we get quiet and we attune to where the current seasonal cycle is, I guess it provides a bit of a spiritual connection to that cycle of life and death, you know, and through that, through appreciating the cycles of life and death that we can see quite clearly in the natural world, it kind of helps us to move to like a place of acceptance. Even if it's been a really difficult bereavement, we can maybe find some acceptance, and also a sense of spiritual support in that which is greater than us, the earth, the natural world, the universe at large. And then finally, meeting with understanding people. And I've put understanding people because I essentially mean your tribe, the people who get you, the people who get this, the people who are up for the deep and meaningful conversations, those people that are there in the dark with you, holding your hand, just allowing you space. And so I guess on that, just noticing boundaries with those people around you who are not able to hold space for you is really important. And just spending as much time as you can, or asking for that time with those people, can be really helpful as well. And so finally, just to say, if you are going through a bereavement, I am really sorry, you know, for your loss, but know that there's lots of things that you can do to support yourself. And I guess finally, just to say, it takes time. And I know it's such a cliche and people say it all the time, and it hasn't been until I've gone through a couple of significant losses myself that I can see with time things are helpful. But it's what you do in that time that makes a difference, because grief for me and loss has been one of my biggest teachers, and I do believe that through each loss there is some gold that can come out of it. When I think about some of the people that I've lost, I think about what they've taught me, and so I think, you know, there can be a gift that comes out of it as well. Okay, that's it from me today. I hope you've liked the video. I know it's a sensitive subject. I would love to hear any stories or thoughts you've had on this, anything that you found tricky in particular as you've gone through a bereavement, or any suggestions to anybody else out there that is watching and needs some support around their own grief journey. Of course, as always, I welcome you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and maybe share the video too. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the next video.